South America is a continent entirely in the Western Hemisphere and mostly in the Southern Hemisphere, with a considerably smaller portion in the Northern Hemisphere. It can also be described as the southern subregion of the Americas. South America is bordered on the west by the Pacific Ocean and on the north and east by the Atlantic Ocean. North America and the Caribbean Sea lie to the northwest. The continent is generally taken to include 12 sovereign states: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Paraguay, Peru, Suriname, Uruguay, and Venezuela, 2 dependent territories, the Falkland Islands and South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, and 1 internal territory, French Guiana. In addition, the ABC Islands of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Ascension Island, Bouvet Island, Panama, and Trinidad and Tobago may also be considered parts of South America. South America has an area of 17,840,000 square kilometers. Its population as of 2021 has been estimated at more than 434 million. South America ranks 4th in area after Asia, Africa, and North America, and 5th in population after Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. Brazil is by far the most populous South American country, with almost half of the continent's population, followed by Colombia, Argentina, Venezuela, and Peru. In recent decades, Brazil has also generated half of the continent's GDP and has become the continent's first regional power. Most of the population lives near the continent's western or eastern coasts, while the interior and the far south are sparsely populated. The geography of western South America is dominated by the Andes Mountains. In contrast, the eastern part contains both highland regions and vast lowlands where rivers such as the Amazon, Orinoco, and Parana flow. Most of the continent lies in the tropics, except for a large part of the southern cone located in the middle latitudes. The continent's cultural and ethnic outlook has its origin with the interaction of indigenous peoples with European conquerors and immigrants and, more locally, with African slaves. Given a long history of colonialism, the overwhelming majority of South Americans speak Spanish or Portuguese, and societies and states are rich in Western traditions. Relative to Europe, Asia, and Africa, post-1900 South America has been a peaceful continent with few wars. Geography. South America occupies the southern portion of the Americas. The continent is generally delimited on the northwest by the Darien watershed along the Colombia-Panama border, although some may consider the border instead to be the Panama Canal. Geopolitically and geographically, all of Panama, including the segment east of the Panama Canal in the Isthmus, is typically included in North America alone and among the countries of Central America. Almost all of mainland South America sits on the South American plate. South America is home to several superlatives, including the world's second highest uninterrupted waterfall, Angel Falls in Venezuela, the highest single-drop waterfall Cayatur Falls in Guyana, the largest river by volume, the Amazon River, the longest mountain range, the Andes, the driest nonpolar place on Earth, the Atacama Desert, the wettest place on Earth, Lopez de Micay in Colombia, the largest rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, the highest capital city, La Paz, Bolivia, the highest commercially navigable lake in the world, Lake Titicaca, and, excluding research stations in Antarctica, the world's southernmost permanently inhabited community, Puerto Toro, Chile. South America's major mineral resources are gold, silver, copper, iron ore, tin, and petroleum. These resources have brought high income to its countries, especially in times of war or of rapid economic growth by industrialized countries elsewhere. However, the concentration in producing one, or few major export commodities has often hindered the development and diversification of its economies. The fluctuation in the price of commodities in international markets has led historically to major highs and lows, booms and busts, in the economies of South American states, often causing political instability. This has led for calls to diversify production and increase trade within South America itself. Brazil is the largest country in South America, covering a little less than half of the continent's land area and encompassing around half of the continent's population. The remaining countries and territories are divided among 4 subregions: the Andean states, Caribbean South America, the Guyanas, and the Southern Cone. Climate. The distribution of the average temperatures in the region presents a constant regularity from the 30 degrees of latitude south, when the isotherms tend, more and more, to be confused with the degrees of latitude. In temperate latitudes, winters and summers are milder than in North America. This is because the most extensive part of the continent is in the equatorial zone, therefore giving the southern cone more oceanic influence, which moderates year-round temperatures. The average annual temperatures in the Amazon basin oscillate around 27 degrees Celsius, with low thermal amplitudes and high rainfall indices. Between the Maracaibo Lake and the mouth of the Orinoco, predominates an equatorial climate of the type Congolese, that also includes parts of the Brazilian territory. The east-central Brazilian plateau has a humid and warm tropical climate. The northern and eastern parts of the Argentine pampas have a humid subtropical climate with dry winters and humid summers of the Chinese type, while the western and eastern ranges have a subtropical climate of the Dinaric type. At the highest points of the Andean region, climates are colder than the ones occurring at the highest point of the Norwegian fjords. In the Andean plateaus, the warm climate prevails, although it is tempered by the altitude, while in the coastal strip, there is an equatorial climate of the Guinean type. From this point until the north of the Chilean coast appear, successively, Mediterranean oceanic climate, temperate of the Breton type and, already in Tierra del Fuego, cold climate of the Siberian type. The distribution of rainfall is related to the regime of winds and air masses. In most of the tropical region east of the Andes, winds blowing from the northeast, east, and southeast carry moisture from the Atlantic, causing abundant rainfall. However, due to a consistently strong wind shear and a weak intertropical convergence zone, South Atlantic tropical cyclones are rare. In the Orinoco Llanos and in the Guyanas Plateau, the precipitation levels go from moderate to high. The Pacific coast of Colombia and northern Ecuador are rainy regions, with Choco in Colombia being the rainiest place in the world along with the northern slopes of Indian Himalayas. The Atacama Desert, along this stretch of coast, is one of the driest regions in the world. The central and southern parts of Chile are subject to extratropical cyclones, and most of the Argentine Patagonia is desert. In the pampas of Argentina, Uruguay, and south of Brazil the rainfall is moderate, with rains well distributed during the year. The moderately dry conditions of the Chaco oppose the intense rainfall of the eastern region of Paraguay. In the semi-arid coast of the Brazilian northeast the rains are linked to a monsoon regime. Important factors in the determination of climates are sea currents, such as the current Humboldt and Falklands. The equatorial current of the South Atlantic strikes the coast of the northeast and there is divided into 2 others, the current of Brazil and a coastal current that flows to the northwest towards the Antilles, where there it moves towards northeast course thus forming the most important and famous ocean current in the world, the Gulf Stream. Prehistory. South America is thought to have been first inhabited by humans when people were crossing the Bering Land Bridge at least 15,000 years ago from the territory that is present-day Russia. They migrated south through North America, and eventually reached South America through the Isthmus of Panama. Amongst the oldest evidence for human presence in South America is the Monte Verde II site in Chile, suggested to date to around 14,500 years ago. From around 13,000 years ago, the fishtail projectile point style became widespread across South America, with its disappearance around 11,000 years ago coincident with the disappearance of South America's megafauna. Maize was present in northern South America by around 6,000 years ago. By 2000 BC, many agrarian communities had been settled throughout the Andes and the surrounding regions. Fishing became a widespread practice along the coast, helping establish fish as a primary source of food. Irrigation systems were also developed at this time, which aided in the rise of an agrarian society. South American cultures began domesticating llamas, vicuñas, guanacos, and alpacas in the highlands of the Andes circa 3500 BC. Besides their use as sources of meat and wool, these animals were used for transportation of goods. European colonization. In 1494, Portugal and Spain, the two great maritime European powers of that time, on the expectation of new lands being discovered in the west, signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, by which they agreed, with the support of the Pope, that all the land outside Europe should be an exclusive duopoly between the two countries. The treaty established an imaginary line along a north-south meridian 370 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands. In terms of the treaty, all land to the west of the line known to comprise most of the South American soil would belong to Spain, and all land to the east, to Portugal. As accurate measurements of longitude were impossible at that time, the line was not strictly enforced, resulting in a Portuguese expansion of Brazil across the meridian. Beginning in the 1530s, the people and natural resources of South America were repeatedly exploited by foreign conquistadors, first from Spain and later from Portugal. These competing colonial nations claimed the land and resources as their own and divided it into colonies. European infectious diseases, to which the native populations had no immune resistance, caused large-scale depopulation of the native population under Spanish control. Systems of forced labor, such as the haciendas and mining industries MITA, also contributed to the depopulation. After this, enslaved Africans, who had developed immunities to these diseases, were quickly brought in to replace them. The Spaniards were committed to converting their native subjects to Christianity and were quick to purge any native cultural practices that hindered this end. However, many initial attempts at this were only partially successful, as native groups simply blended Catholicism with their established beliefs and practices. Furthermore, the Spaniards brought their language to the degree they did with their religion, although the Roman Catholic Church's evangelization in Quechua, Aymara, and Guarani actually contributed to the continuous use of these native languages, albeit only in the oral form. Eventually, the natives and the Spaniards interbred, forming a mestizo class. At the beginning, many mestizos of the Andean region were offspring of Amerindian mothers and Spanish fathers. After independence, most mestizos had native fathers and European or mestizo mothers. Many native artworks were considered pagan idols and destroyed by Spanish explorers. This included many gold and silver sculptures and other artifacts found in South America, which were melted down before their transport to Spain or Portugal. Spaniards and Portuguese brought the Western European architectural style to the continent, and helped to improve infrastructures like bridges, roads, and the sewer system of the cities they discovered or conquered. They also significantly increased economic and trade relations, not just between the Old and New World but between the different South American regions and peoples. Finally, with the expansion of the Portuguese and Spanish languages, many cultures that were previously separated became united through that of Latin American. Guyana was initially colonized by the Dutch before coming under British control, though there was a brief period during the Napoleonic Wars when it was occupied by the French. The region was initially partitioned between the Dutch, French, and British before fully coming under the control of Britain. Suriname was first explored by the Spanish in the 16th century and then settled by the English in the mid-17th century. It became a Dutch colony in 1667. Government and politics. Historically, the Hispanic countries were founded as republican dictatorships led by caudillos. Brazil was the only exception, being a constitutional monarchy for its first 67 years of independence, until a coup d'état proclaimed a republic. In the late 19th century, the most democratic countries were Brazil, Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay. All South American countries are presidential republics with the exception of Suriname, a parliamentary republic. French Guiana is a French overseas department, while the Falkland Islands and South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands are British overseas territories. It is currently the only inhabited continent in the world without monarchies. The Empire of Brazil existed during the 19th century and there was an unsuccessful attempt to establish a kingdom of Araucania and Patagonia in southern Argentina and Chile. Also in the 20th century, Suriname was established as a constituent kingdom of the Netherlands, and Guyana retained the British monarch as head of state for 4 years after its independence. Recently, an intergovernmental entity has been formed which aims to merge the two existing customs unions, Mercosur and the Andean Community, thus forming the third largest trade bloc in the world. This new political organization, known as Union of South American Nations, seeks to establish free movement of people, economic development, a common defense policy and the elimination of tariffs. Language. Spanish and Portuguese are the most spoken languages in South America, with approximately 200 million speakers each. Spanish is the official language of most countries, along with other native languages in some countries. Portuguese is the official language of Brazil. Dutch is the official language of Suriname, English is the official language of Guyana, although there are at least 12 other languages spoken in the country, including Portuguese, Chinese, Hindustani and several native languages. English is also spoken in the Falkland Islands. French is the official language of French Guiana and the second language in Amapá, Brazil. Indigenous languages of South America include Quechua in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, and Colombia, Wayuunaki in northern Colombia and northwestern Venezuela, Guarani in Paraguay and, to a much lesser extent, in Bolivia, Aymara in Bolivia, Peru, and less often in Chile, and Mapudungun is spoken in certain pockets of southern Chile. At least 3 South American indigenous languages are recognized along with Spanish as national languages. Other languages found in South America include Hindustani and Javanese in Suriname, Italian in Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Venezuela, and German in certain pockets of Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. German is also spoken in many regions of the southern states of Brazil, Rio Grandenser Hunsrückisch being the most widely spoken German dialect in the country. Among other Germanic dialects, a Brazilian form of East Pomeranian is also well represented and is experiencing a revival. Welsh remains spoken and written in the historic towns of Trelew and Rawson in the Argentine Patagonia. Croatian is spoken in southern Chile. Arabic speakers, often of Lebanese, Syrian, or Palestinian descent, can be found in Arab communities in Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela, and in Paraguay. Religion. An estimated 90% of South Americans are Christians, accounting for 19% of Christians worldwide. African descendant and indigenous religions are common throughout South America. Some examples are Santo Daime, Candomblé, and Umbanda. Crypto-Jews or Marranos, Conversos, and Anasim were an important part of colonial life in Latin America. Buenos Aires and São Paulo figure among the largest Jewish populations by urban area. East Asian religions such as Japanese Buddhism, Shintoism, and Shinto-derived Japanese new religions are common in Brazil and Peru. Korean Confucianism is especially found in Brazil, while Chinese Buddhism and Chinese Confucianism have spread throughout the continent. Kardecist Spiritism can be found in several countries. Hindus form 25% of the Guyanese population and 22% of Suriname's. Muslims account for 7% of the Guyanese population and 14% of the Surinamese population. Almost all Muslims in Suriname are either Indonesian or Indians, and in Guyana, most are Indian. Indigenous people. In some places, indigenous people still practice a traditional lifestyle, based on subsistence agriculture or as hunter-gatherers. There are still uncontacted tribes residing in the Amazon rainforest, such as Aguarunas, Alacaleuf, Arawaks, Ashaninkas, Atacamanos, Awa, Aymara, Banawa, Canaras, Kayapo, Chibcha, Kokama, Chayawit, Diaguita, and Xet. Economy. Since 1930, the continent has experienced growth and diversification in most economic sectors. Most agricultural and livestock products are destined for the domestic market and local consumption. However, the export of agricultural products is essential for the balance of trade in most countries. The main agrarian crops are export crops, such as soy and wheat. The production of staple foods such as vegetables, corn, or beans is large, but focused on domestic consumption. Livestock raising for meat exports is significant in Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Colombia. In tropical regions, the most important crops are coffee, cocoa, and bananas, mainly in Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador. Traditionally, the countries producing sugar for export are Peru, Guyana, and Suriname, and in Brazil, sugar cane is also used to make ethanol. On the coast of Peru, northeast and south of Brazil, cotton is grown. 51% of South America's land surface is covered by forest. Transnational companies have settled in the Amazon rainforest to exploit timber destined for export. The Pacific coastal waters are the most important for commercial fishing. The anchovy catch reaches thousands of tons, and tuna is abundant. Peru is a major exporter. The capture of crustaceans is large, particularly in northeastern Brazil and Chile. Brazil and Argentina are part of the G20 industrial countries, while only Brazil is part of the G8+5. In the tourism sector, negotiations began in 2005 to promote tourism and increase air connections within the region. Punta del Este, Florianopolis, and Mar del Plata are among the largest resorts in South America. The most industrialized countries in South America are Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and Chile respectively. These countries alone account for more than 80% of the region's economy. Industries in South America significantly developed from the 1930s, when the Great Depression in the United States and elsewhere boosted industrial production on the continent. The region partially moved away from agriculture and began to achieve high rates of economic growth that remained until the early 1990s, when they slowed due to political instabilities and economic crises. Since the end of the economic crisis in Brazil and Argentina between 1998 and 2002, which led to economic recession, rising unemployment, and falling income, the industrial and service sectors have recovered. South America has shown good signs of economic stability, with controlled inflation and exchange rates, continuous growth, a decrease in social inequality and unemployment, factors that favor industry. The main industries are electronics, textiles, food, automotive, metallurgy, aviation, naval, clothing, beverage, steel, tobacco, timber, chemical, among others. The economic gap between rich and poor in most South American nations is larger than most other continents. The richest 10% receive over 40% of the nation's income in Bolivia, Brazil, and Colombia, while the poorest 20% receive 4% or less. This wide gap can be seen in large South American cities where makeshift shacks and slums lie in the vicinity of skyscrapers and luxury apartments. Many South Americans live on less than $2 per day. Agriculture. The four countries with the strongest agriculture are Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Colombia. Currently, Brazil is the world's largest producer of sugarcane, soy, coffee, orange, guarana, acai, and Brazil nut, is one of the top 5 producers of maize, papaya, tobacco, pineapple, banana, cotton, beans, coconut, watermelon, lemon, and yerba mate, is one of the top 10 world producers of cocoa, cashew, avocado, tangerine, persimmon, mango, guava, rice, oat, sorghum, and tomato, and is one of the top 15 world producers of grape, apple, melon, peanut, fig, peach, onion, palm oil, and natural rubber. Argentina is the world's largest producer of yerba mate, is one of the 5 largest producers in the world of soy, maize, sunflower seed, lemon, and pear, one of the 10 largest producers in the world of barley, grape, artichoke, tobacco, and cotton, and one of the 15 largest producers in the world of wheat, oat, chickpea, sugarcane, sorghum, and grapefruit. Chile is one of the 5 largest world producers of cherry and cranberry, and one of the 10 largest world producers of grape, apple, kiwi, peach, plum, and hazelnut, focusing on exporting high-value fruits. Colombia is one of the 5 largest producers in the world of coffee, avocado, and palm oil, and one of the 10 largest producers in the world of sugarcane, banana, pineapple, and cocoa. Peru is the world's largest producer of quinoa, is one of the 5 largest producers of avocado, blueberry, artichoke, and asparagus, one of the 10 largest producers in the world of coffee and cocoa, one of the 15 largest producers in the world of potato and pineapple, and also has a considerable production of grape, sugarcane, rice, banana, maize, and cassava. Its agriculture is considerably diversified. Paraguay's agriculture is currently developing, being currently the 6th largest producer of soy in the world and entering the list of the 20 largest producers of maize and sugarcane. Brazil is the world's largest exporter of chicken meat, 3.8 million tons in 2019. The country is the holder of the 2nd largest herd of cattle in the world, 22% of the world herd. The country was the 2nd largest producer of beef in 2019, responsible for 15% of global production. It was also the 3rd largest world producer of milk in 2018, 35 billion liters. In 2019, Brazil was the 4th largest pork producer in the world, with almost 4 million tons. In 2018, Argentina was the 4th largest producer of beef in the world, with a production of 3 million tons. In chicken meat production, Argentina ranks among the 15 largest producers in the world, and Peru and Colombia among the 20 biggest producers. In beef production, Colombia is one of the 20 largest producers in the world. In honey production, Argentina ranks among the 5 largest. In cow's milk, Argentina ranks among the 20 largest producers. Manufacturing. The World Bank annually lists the top manufacturing countries by total manufacturing value. According to the 2019 list, Brazil has the 13th most valuable industry in the world, Venezuela the 30th largest, Argentina the 31st largest, Colombia the 46th largest, Peru the 50th largest, and Chile the 51st largest. Brazil has the 3rd largest manufacturing sector in the Americas. Accounting for 29% of GDP, Brazil's industries range from automobiles, steel, and petrochemicals to computers, aircraft, food, pharmaceutical, footwear, metallurgy and consumer durables. In the food industry, in 2019, Brazil was the second largest exporter of processed foods in the world. In 2016, the country was the second largest producer of pulp and the eighth producer of paper. In the footwear industry, in 2019, Brazil ranked fourth among world producers. In 2019, the country was the eighth producer of vehicles and the ninth producer of steel in the world. In 2018, the chemical industry of Brazil was the eighth in the world. In textile industry, Brazil, although it was among the 5 largest world producers in 2013, is very little integrated in world trade. Mining. Mining is one of the most important economic sectors in South America, especially for Chile, Peru, and Bolivia, whose economies are highly dependent on this sector. The continent is a large producer of gold mainly in Peru, Brazil, and Argentina, silver mainly in Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina, copper mainly in Chile, Peru, and Brazil, iron ore mainly in Brazil, Peru, and Chile, zinc in Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil, and etc. Brazil stands out in the extraction of iron ore, where it is the second largest producer and exporter in the world. Iron ore is usually one of the 3 export products that generate the greatest value in the country's trade balance: copper, gold, bauxite, manganese, tin, niobium, and nickel. In terms of gemstones, Brazil is the world's largest producer of amethyst, topaz, agate, and one of the main producers of tourmaline, emerald, aquamarine, garnet and opal. Chile contributes about a third of the world copper production. In addition to copper, Chile was, in 2019, the world's largest producer of iodine and rhenium, the second largest producer of lithium and molybdenum, the 6th largest producer of silver, the 7th largest producer of salt, the 8th largest producer of potash, the 13th producer of sulfur, and the 13th producer of iron ore in the world. In 2019, Peru was the second largest world producer of copper and silver, 8th largest world producer of gold, 3rd largest world producer of lead, 2nd largest world producer of zinc, 4th largest world producer of tin, 5th largest world producer of boron, and 4th largest world producer of molybdenum. In 2019, Bolivia was the 8th largest world producer of silver, 4th largest world producer of boron, 5th largest world producer of antimony, 5th largest world producer of tin, 6th largest world producer of tungsten, 7th largest producer of zinc, and the 8th largest producer of lead. In 2019, Argentina was the 4th largest world producer of lithium, the 9th largest world producer of silver, the 17th largest world producer of gold, and the 7th largest world producer of boron. Colombia is the world's largest producer of emeralds. In the production of gold, among 2006 and 2017, the country produced 15 tons per year until 2007, when its production increased significantly, breaking a record of 66.1 tons extracted in 2012. In 2017, it extracted 52.2 tons. The country is among the 25 largest gold producers in the world. In the production of silver, in 2017 the country extracted 15.5 tons. In the production of oil, Brazil was the 10th largest oil producer in the world in 2019, with 2.8 million barrels a day. Venezuela was the 21st largest, with 877,000 barrels a day, and Colombia in 22nd with 886,000. As Venezuela and Ecuador consume little oil and export most of their production, they are part of OPEC. Venezuela had a big drop in production after 2015 where it produced 2.5 million barrels a day, falling in 2018 to 1.4 million and in 2019 to 877,000, due to lack of investment. In the beginning of 2020, in the production of oil and natural gas, Brazil exceeded 4 million barrels of oil equivalent per day, for the first time. In January 2021, 3.168 million barrels of oil per day and 139 million cubic meters of natural gas were extracted. The continent had two of the 30 largest world producers of coal in 2018, Colombia and Brazil. Tourism. Tourism has increasingly become a significant source of income for South American countries. Historic relics, architectural and natural wonders, a diverse range of foods and culture, colorful cities, and pretty landscapes attract millions of tourists every year to South America. Some of the most visited places in the region are Rio de Janeiro, Florianopolis, Iguazu Falls, São Paulo, Armacao dos Buzios, Salvador, Bombinhas, Angra dos Reis, Balneario Camboriú, Paraty, Ipajica, Natal, Caruaru, Fortaleza and Itapema in Brazil, Buenos Aires, Bariloche, Salta, Jujuy, Perito Moreno Glacier, Valdez Peninsula, Guarani Jesuit missions in the cities of Misiones and Corrientes, Isquigualasto Provincial Park, Ushuaia and Patagonia in Argentina, Isla Margarita, Angel Falls, Los Roques. Archipelago, Gran Sabana in Venezuela, Machu Picchu, Lima, Nazca Lines, Cuzco in Peru, Lake Titicaca, Sala de Uyuni, La Paz, Jesuit missions of Chiquitos in Bolivia, Taraná National Natural Park, Santa Marta, Bogotá, Cali, Medellin, Cartagena in Colombia, and the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. In 2016 Brazil hosted the 2016 Summer Olympics. Culture. South Americans are culturally influenced by their indigenous peoples, the historic connection with the Iberian Peninsula and Africa, and waves of immigrants from around the globe. South American nations have a rich variety of music. Some of the most famous genres include vallenato and cumbia from Colombia, Pasillo from Colombia and Ecuador, samba, bossa nova, and música sertaneja from Brazil, joropo from Venezuela and tango from Argentina and Uruguay. Also well known is the non-commercial folk genre Nueva Canción movement, which was founded in Argentina and Chile and quickly spread to the rest of the Latin America. People on the Peruvian coast created the fine guitar and cajon duos or trios in the most mestizo of South American rhythms such as the marinera, the tondero, the 19th century popular Creole valse or Peruvian valse, the soulful arquipañaravi, and the early 20th century Paraguayan guarania. In the late 20th century, Spanish rock emerged by young hipsters influenced by British pop and American rock. Brazil has a Portuguese-language pop-rock industry as well as a great variety of other music genres. In the central and western regions of Bolivia, Andean and folklore music like Diablada, Caporales, and Mornada are the most representative of the country, which were originated by European, Aymara and Quechua influences. The literature of South America has attracted considerable critical and popular acclaim, especially with the Latin American boom of the 1960s and 1970s, and the rise of authors such as Mario Vargas Llosa, Gabriel Garcia Marquez in novels, and Jorge Luis Borges and Pablo Neruda in other genres. The Brazilians Machado de Assis and João Guimarães Rosa are widely regarded as the greatest Brazilian writers. Food and drink. Because of South America's broad ethnic mix, South American cuisine has African, Mestizo, South Asian, East Asian, and European influences. Bahia, Brazil, is especially well known for its West African influenced cuisine. Argentines, Chileans, Uruguayans, Brazilians, Bolivians, and Venezuelans regularly consume wine. People in Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, southern Chile, Bolivia, and southern Brazil drink mate, an herb which is brewed. The Paraguayan version, tereré, differs from other forms of mate in that it is served cold. Pisco is a liquor distilled from grapes in Peru and Chile. Peruvian cuisine mixes elements from Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, Italian, African, Arab, Andean, and Amazonic food. Sport. A wide range of sports are played in the continent of South America, with football being the most popular overall, while baseball is the most popular in Venezuela. Other sports include basketball, cycling, polo, volleyball, futsal, motorsports, rugby, handball, tennis, golf, field hockey, boxing, and cricket. South America hosted its first Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 2016, and has hosted the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in 2018. A multi-sport event, the South American Games, are held every 4 years. The first edition was held in La Paz in 1978 and the most recent took place in Santiago in 2014. South America shares, with Europe, supremacy over football. All winners in the FIFA World Cup and FIFA Club World Cup have come from these two continents. Brazil has won the FIFA World Cup a record 5 times, Argentina 3 times, Uruguay twice. 5 South American nations have hosted the tournament, including the first edition in Uruguay. 2 were in Brazil, Chile, and Argentina. South America is home to the longest-running international football tournament, the Copa America, which has been contested since 1916. Argentina and Uruguay have won the Copa America 15 times each, the most among all countries. South American Cricket Championship is an international one-day cricket tournament played since 1995 featuring national teams from South America and certain other invited sides including teams from North America, currently played annually but until 2013 was usually played every 2 seasons. Transport. Transport in South America is basically carried out using various modes including roads, seaports, and airports. The railway and fluvial sector, although having more robust contemporary potential, are still somewhat treated in a secondary way. Roads. Due to the Andes Mountains, Amazon River, and Amazon Forest, there have always been difficulties in implementing larger-scale transcontinental or bioceanic highways. Practically the only route that existed was the one that connected Brazil to Buenos Aires, and later to Santiago. However, in recent years, with the combined effort of countries, new routes have started to emerge, such as Brazil-Peru, and a new highway between Brazil, Paraguay, northern Argentina, and northern Chile. Some of the most modern roads extend through northern and southeast Argentina, and south of Brazil. A vast road complex aims to link Brasilia, the federal capital, to the south, southeast, northeast and northern regions of Brazil. Brazil has more than 1.7 million kilometers of roads, of which 215,000 kilometers are paved, and about 14,000 kilometers are divided highways. Argentina has more than 600,000 kilometers of roads, of which about 70,000 kilometers are paved, and about 2,500 kilometers are divided highways. Colombia has about 210,000 kilometers of roads, and about 2,300 kilometers are divided highways. Chile has about 82,000 kilometers of roads, 20,000 kilometers of which are paved, and about 2,000 kilometers are divided highways. These four countries are the ones with the best road infrastructure and with the largest number of double-lane highways. In addition, there is a reputed Pan-American highway, which crosses Argentina and the Andean countries from north to south, although various stretches are unfinished. Aviation. In South America, commercial aviation has a magnificent expansion field, which has one of the largest traffic density lines in the world, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and large airports, such as Congonhas, São Paulo, Guarulhos International and Viracopos in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro International and Santos Dumont, El Dorado in Bogotá, Ezeiza in Buenos Aires, Tancredo Neves International Airport, Curitiba International Airport, Brasilia, Caracas, Montevideo, Lima, Viru International Airport, Recife, Salvador, Salgado Filho International Airport, Fortaleza, Manaus, and Belém. There are more than 2,000 airports in Brazil. The country has the second largest number of airports in the world, behind only the United States. São Paulo International Airport, located in the metropolitan region of São Paulo, is the largest and busiest in the country. The airport connects São Paulo to practically all major cities around the world. Brazil has 44 international airports, such as those in Rio de Janeiro, Brasilia, Belo Horizonte, Porto Alegre, Florianópolis, Cuiabá, Salvador, Recife, Fortaleza, Belém, and Manaus, among others. Argentina has important international airports such as Buenos Aires, Córdoba, Bariloche, Mendoza, Salta, Porto Iguaçu, Neuquén, and Ushuaia, among others. Chile has important international airports such as Santiago, Antofagasta, Porto Montt, Punta Arenas and Iquique, among others. Colombia has important international airports such as Bogotá, Medellín, Cartagena, Cali, and Barranquilla, among others. Other important airports are those in the capitals of Uruguay, Paraguay, Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador. The 10 busiest airports in South America in 2017 were São Paulo Guarulhos, Bogotá, São Paulo Congonhas, Santiago, Lima, Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires Aeroparque, Buenos Aires Ezeiza, and Minas Gerais. Seaports and harbors. The two main merchant fleets also belong to Brazil and Argentina. The following are those of Chile, Venezuela, Peru, and Colombia. The largest ports in commercial movement are those of Buenos Aires, Santos, Rio de Janeiro, Bahia Blanca, Rosario, Valparaiso, Recife, Salvador, Montevideo, Paranagua, Rio Grande, Fortaleza, Belém, and Maracaibo. About ports, Brazil has some of the busiest seaports in South America, such as Port of Santos, Port of Rio de Janeiro, Port of Paranagua, Port of Itajaí, Port of Rio Grande, Port of São Francisco do Sul and Suape Port. Argentina has ports such as Port of Buenos Aires and Port of Rosario. Chile has important ports in Valparaiso, Caldera, Magallanes, Antofagasta, Iquique, Arica, and Porto Montt. Colombia has important ports such as Buenaventura, Cartagena Container Terminal and Puerto Bolívar. Peru has important ports in Callao, Ilo, and Matarani. The 15 busiest ports in South America are Port of Santos in Brazil, Port of Bahia de Cartagena in Colombia, Callao in Peru, Guayaquil in Ecuador, Buenos Aires in Argentina, San Antonio in Chile, Buenaventura in Colombia, Itajaí in Brazil, Valparaiso in Chile, Montevideo in Uruguay, Paranagua in Brazil, Rio Grande in Brazil, São Francisco do Sul in Brazil, Manaus in Brazil and Coronel in Chile. Rail. Two primary railroads are continental, the Transandina, which connects Buenos Aires, in Argentina to Valparaiso, in Chile, and the Brazil-Bolivia Railroad, which makes it the connection between the port of Santos in Brazil and the city of Santa Cruz de la Sierra, in Bolivia. Two areas of greater density occur in the railway sector: the Platinum Network, which develops around the Platen region, largely belonging to Argentina, with more than 45,000 kilometers in length, and the Southeast Brazil Network, which mainly serves the state of São Paulo, state of Rio de Janeiro and Minas Gerais. The Argentine Rail Network, with 47,000 kilometers of tracks, and at one stage was one of the largest in the world and continues to be the most extensive in Latin America. It came to have about 100,000 kilometers of rails, but the lifting of tracks and the emphasis placed on motor transport gradually reduced it. It has 4 different trails and international connections with Paraguay, Bolivia, Chile, Brazil, and Uruguay. The Brazilian railway network has an extension of about 30,000 kilometers. It is basically used for transporting ores. Chile has almost 7,000 kilometers of railways, with connections to Argentina, Bolivia, and Peru. Colombia has about 3,500 kilometers of railways. Waterways. South America has one of the largest bays of navigable inland waterways in the world, represented mainly by the Amazon Basin, the Platen Basin, the São Francisco and the Orinoco Basins, Brazil having about 54,000 kilometers navigable, while Argentina has 6,500 kilometers and Venezuela, 1,200 kilometers. Among the main Brazilian waterways, 2 stand out: Hidrovia Tete Parana, which has a length of 2,400 kilometers, 1,600 on the Parana River and 800 kilometers on the Tete River, draining agricultural production from the states of Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, and part of Rondônia, Tocantins and Minas Gerais, and Hidrovia do Solimões Amazonas, which has 2 sections: Solimões, which extends from Tabatinga to Manaus, with approximately 1,600 kilometers, and Amazonas, which extends from Manaus to Belém, with 1,650 kilometers. Almost entirely passenger transport from the Amazon plain is done by this waterway, in addition to practically all cargo transportation that is directed to the major regional centers of Belém and Manaus. In Brazil, this transport is still underused. The most important waterway stretches, from an economic point of view, are found in the southeast and south of the country. Its full use still depends on the construction of locks, major dredging works and, mainly, of ports that allow intermodal integration. In Argentina, the waterway network is made up of the La Plata, Parana, Paraguay, and Uruguay rivers. The main river ports are Zarate and Campana. The port of Buenos Aires is historically the first in individual importance, but the area known as upriver, which stretches along 67 kilometers of the Santa Fe portion of the Parana River, brings together 17 ports that concentrate 50% of the total exports of the country. Public transport. The main public transport in major cities is the bus. Many cities have a diverse system of metro and subway trains, the first of which was the Buenos Aires Subte, opened 1913. The Santiago subway is the largest network in South America, with 103 kilometers, while the São Paulo subway is the most heavily used, with more than 4.6 million passengers per day. Rio de Janeiro installed the continent's first railroad in 1854. Today the city has a diversified system of metropolitan trains, integrated with buses and subway. It has a light rail system called VLT, with small electrical trams at low speed, while São Paulo has inaugurated a monorail. In Brazil, an express bus system called Bus Rapid Transit, which operates in several cities, has been developed. Mi Teleférico, also known as Teleférico La Paz, El Alto, is an aerial cable car urban transit system serving the La Paz, El Alto metropolitan area in Bolivia.